All right, what's up, y'all? My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. We've got four sides to us. Yes, we're a clothing company, but really the reason is for the human body's natural function. We address the human body and allow it to work. That's our key word, is the first one. Allowing is all we can do to something that's been designed by somebody who wasn't us and isn't us, but God designed our bodies in his image, hence our company name, In the Image Clothing Company. 5 words as a whole. We've got 4 sides. This is the main side, and that's what we do. We address clothing because it's the only thing placed onto our bodies, and it can alter the body. If there's imbalances in clothing, the body will be imbalanced. There's a sternum, a trachea, a spine, a nose, the jaw, which naturally stabilizes the entire body. I just woke up. And it all needs to stay in the center on an earth with gravity pulling us straight down. There's arches in our feet that oppose the center line from either side that stabilize us by gripping inward. And yes, so there's a lot that we do here. Eating, sleeping, standing, walking, sitting, hydration, doing all these things naturally as a human being, a mechanical machine placed on a rock in space, Earth. Okay, we're all on the same one, and how is it, what it is, and stuff like that, right? We discussed that on another fourth of our company, In the Image Clothing Company podcast, aka The Truth of All Things. We have another fourth, which is In the Image Clothing Company Music, where I show sizings and setups of guitars so that we don't alter our hands. The hands are essentially the shoulders, as the feet are essentially the hips. The body only works as a whole, activated in its entirety, because anywhere any of it goes, all of it's coming with, okay? Another fourth is In the Image Clothing Company Dogs. I just waited for that school bell to finish ringing. Over there, we do similar to what we do with the human body. We let dogs stay natural. Dogs and human beings are very similar in the fact that they're just a body of flesh placed onto this planet. And in modern day, today's the 24th of April, 2025, there's a lot of unnatural things going into dog accessories as there is within clothing. So ideally for human beings' clothing, 100% natural materials, staying centered and fitting correct is how we, keyword, allow the human body to work. And that's what In the Image Clothing Company clothing will be. But same thing with dogs. Ideally natural and everything, because everything would be natural until we synthetically make things. And a lot of dogs are actually suffering repercussions from those things, and we don't really even know it a lot of the time as human beings. So, yeah, right? Dehydrated kibble, collars, leashes, harnesses that are imbalanced. We will have collars and leashes available under In the Image Clothing Company to do what we do with clothing for human beings as well. So, clothing for every human being needs to sit in the same location because we're all the same thing, man. If you're a man or a woman, tall or short, skinny or fat, any age or any part of the earth or any time period to ever be, you're a human being. And we're all just having to be unaltered, otherwise we're altered. yeah. So pants need to be entirely above the hips. So there's no alteration to the pelvis, slightly higher in the front than the rear, so the core muscles can actually stay activated by the only way they ever work, which is by getting shorter. I made a video just a day or two ago for this side here, the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, titled Muscles Only Contract, and that's the case. The seams on top of our shoulders need to be evenly behind the bones on the peak of our shoulders. Button-ups naturally have a band of material that does that. Singular seams though as well. The shoulders ever only will work behind the head. Ideally, just right where the joint's at is where those edge seams need to be. Just where the shoulder is going to function and move, right there at the edge, okay? Shoes sometimes have ropes in them. We call them laces as human beings. And that's one of our 2 prerequisites. And the second one has to do with tags. But there's only one way to weave a rope across the top of the human foot and not alter the mechanics of what the human foot is That's what we call In the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique. And found wherever you find us, 5 words as a whole, In the Image Clothing Company. With that, we have to tie our shoes evenly over toward the center line on both feet because there is one. Otherwise, potential rotation issues to the tip of the head and the tips of the fingers. Okay. Secondly, we remove all tags from clothing. Anywhere a tag is within clothing, it's altering the body. You either remove it or your body's damaged. Period and done. That includes within the shoes as well. Okay. So, here we are. This video is how blowing the nose affects body mechanics. Okay. The body is a machine. It's got hinges, rotations, and it's just a machine. Now, we breathe, and that's great because otherwise we're not going to be alive. Breathing is the first thing that's required physically for a human being to exist. And that goes back to biblical times, okay? This is the whole thing. When I say biblical times, I just mean it's written in the Bible. Not only people back then as well had to breathe, but that's how it came to be, okay? The human being. God breathed breath into the nostrils of Adam, and then he became a man, the first human being to ever live. I get the wind noise in the mic, all right? I address it when I do, and I just did. So when we breathe, though, we should be breathing through our nose, not through our mouth. Even, again, like it just said in the Bible. By just said, I mean, that's what it says in the book of Genesis, in the Holy Bible, which is the Old Testament. It's actually the first book that's in there if you were to open it from the front, okay? Here's the thing. We have to breathe through our nose. There's 2 sides to the center line of the human being, as we discussed earlier. There's 2 nostrils. They need to be able to be evenly allowing air to go through, okay? Oxygen to enter the human being's lungs through the pathways of the nostrils, which are the holes here on either side of the center of our nose. Now, when we blow the nose, there's a lot that happens for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to talk about it, and that's what I'm doing. What happens is, as I say, clothing's the only fix. Period and done. I don't know how much you've known about what clothing's doing to your body, and it doesn't matter. It's still doing it. Truth is truth. It's apart from all of us. You can believe whatever you want, but this is the problem that you're having, meaning this is the solution to it too. The clothing we wear. Now, most all imbalances within clothing will cause the right side of human beings to just be lower than the left. And now, like the shoulders, for example, okay, meaning they are the thing that happens. Yeah, when you go to blow your nose, your right arm just can't reach as high as your left. Unless your body's quite centered, which is so rare, unless you're very intentional because of things that aren't your fault and then things that are stuff we're doing as well, but we're not really aware of usually. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having the problems because we'd probably be doing all that we could to not let them be there. So what happens is, since clothing designs are imbalanced, since that right arm of human beings is almost always lower than the left, when you go to blow your nose, you'll take something, right, and put it onto your nose like this and kind of pinch the sides of your nose with your hands and blow the mucus out of your nose that's excessively in there, okay? But what needs to happen is we need to keep our nose in the center because it's in the center of the human being, and it's so important because we breathe through it. And so the amount of air that comes through, air meaning oxygen that we're breathing in, each nostril, left to right, needs to be the same because it's going down to our left and right rib cage. And within there is our left and right lungs, okay? And if our lungs aren't expanding evenly, left to right, then that in itself is just going to change our body, okay? Through the entirety of it, to the tips of the toes and the tips of the fingers and the tip of the head. So this is what needs to happen. When we blow our nose, we need to start up at the very top of the nose. the nostrils actually go from their opening down here, right above the upper lip. They go all the way up into between the eyes. And when we have a tissue or anything that we're using to blow our nose, we need to have it between our fingers where we're going to like pinch it around our nose, clear up here between our eyes like this. And that way when you're blowing air out of your nose, carbon dioxide is what it really is, but to blow that excess mucus out and then, right, clear your nose out, at that point you have this full open passageway of your nostrils from the very top up here by your eyes, right between your eyeballs, and then the whole nostril of each side of the nose, okay? What'll happen so often, there's a video here under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company titled How Clothing Affects the Eyes. And I talk about how we need to be able to look in each and every direction with our actual eyeballs evenly, okay? Otherwise, there's parts of the body that are compensating to try to just be able to look. And there's an aeroplane. What happens is scar tissue gets built up in places in the body, okay? That's what we do here to allow the body to work. Other than just having, holy aeroplanes, man. Other than just having, you know, our clothing fit in the correct location, we also need to break up the scar tissue that's been built up over years of having clothing in incorrect locations. Scar tissue is when the body is holding on when other things aren't allowed to. Everything within the body has a neutral, okay? Every joint. And we need to be residing in that neutral always. Otherwise, there's damage happening and compensation's trying to, and the body can't compensate because everything has to play its role, or else something is trying to make up for that thing not playing its role. And then that thing that's trying to do that can't play its role because now it's overworked, and then there's just so much damage. And scar tissue builds up in the body, okay? What happens in the nose is because the right hand, which is essentially the shoulder, is lower so commonly, and I could list all the imbalances in clothing, and I probably will, but let me finish discussing this first. When I say all, I'm not going to list every imbalance that could possibly be there, of course. Just when I say of course, just there's so many things. Anything that could be slightly imbalanced is imbalancing your body. It's placed onto us, and otherwise our bodies would just work. So they're designed to work. The human being, yeah. Modern day, there's things that never existed. There was never artificial materials that there are today. Even decades back from today's date, there was never tags placed within clothing, causing gaps and musculature to not be able to activate. Even decades back from today's date, these things didn't even exist. Stretch within clothing, decades back, and then never before then, these things didn't exist at all. So that's why people are having such pain nowadays, and that's why we have In The Image Clothing Company on all four sides. So when we blow our nose, if we're coming at it from an imbalance like this, with one side of our body lower anyway, the right side almost in every case, because that video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company here, titled The Right-Handed World, the world's geared around right-handedness. Clothing patterns are quote-unquote right-handed, weight-wise, and the ways that things just are designed. Stitches as well, and buttons, zippers, coin pockets, right? There's a lot, dude. There's a lot, dude. So what happens though is drawstrings as well, right? Tying a drawstring knot, rotating your entire pelvis, tying shoes potentially any way that's not evenly over toward the center line of the human being because we have to. So yeah, okay, we blow our nose and we're like this often, and so now what's happening is your left nostril has your fingers placed closer to the top of it, just because you can actually lift your left arm pretty well easily. Almost every human being on the earth will be in the exact same patterning, right? Because of what we talk about under In The Image Clothing Company. The truth that never changes, because we didn't design it, so we can't decide it. meaning the human being, but then we design clothing that's imbalanced and place it onto us, and it gets shipped across the entirety of the earth nowadays because that's allowed to happen due to modern things. Okay, so like shipping and aeroplanes that you can hear in the audio of In the Image Clothing Company content because we're raw and real. Okay, now here's the thing, dude. Your left nostril is getting this like open passageway of blowing happening, okay, and clearing out the mucus, which is the intent on blowing the nose. Like behind that happening, that's what you're trying to have happen as the intent on placing something against your face to blow the mucus out. But the right nostril, if you're like taking your fingers and only putting it part of the way up the whole pathway of the right nostril and then blowing from there, kind of like this, right? If you're watching, then you're watching. What happens at that point is above your fingers on that right side, this area where there's still that nostril passageway going up into your sinuses, and then from your nostrils here, the pathway goes up into your sinuses, curves, comes down and down your throat into your lungs, right? The same way that things from your mouth go into your mouth and down into your lungs, because we can breathe through both our mouth and our nose. But ideally we breathe through our nose. That's really why it's there, other than being able to smell things as well, right? That's one of our 5 senses. Now, what needs to happen is evenness with our fingers like this. When we blow the nose, right up here close to the eyeballs, because that's going to be closer to the end of that passageway of the actual air traveling through our sinuses from the opening of our nostrils. And on the right side, where you're not getting all the way as far up with your right fingers as you are with your left so often, and I can feel it right now, right in here, there's scar tissue, like on my actual nose. The skull of the human being is bone, and the nose itself is just like formed with the skull. It's all kind of one thing. There's separate little plates in the head that do make up the entirety of the skull, but it's kind of all just one pretty well smooth bone, okay, made up of multiple plates of bones. But the nose gets scar tissue, man, right here, right off to the right of the nose, kind of right in from the right eyeball, and it's actually the reason. There's other things playing into it. Glasses placed onto the nose, which, again, if the right side of your body is lower anyway, your glasses are just going to sit off-centered anyway. Now you've got problems with your ears as well. That changes your jaw, which your jaw is trying to stabilize your entire body. But also, yes, on your nose, glasses sit. And uneven, if your head's not sitting even because your feet are not from shoelaces, because your shoulders are not, because uneven shoulder seams, because your hips are not, because drawstrings tied twisting the pelvis, or any kind of weight at all that's different, things placed into pockets which should never be done, coin pockets, any imbalances whatsoever. Okay, zippers, check out In the Image Clothing Company. We've got our zipper modification, how drawstrings affect body mechanics. I think the video for the zippers is actually how zippers affect body mechanics, right? In the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique, the official one from us, right? Yikes. So, yeah, shoulders naturally sit behind the head, right? That's a video under In the Image Clothing Company. And if they're not, then you're not going to be blowing your nose evenly, and then every breath you ever take will be imbalanced and change your entire body down to your toes, because you've blown your nose unevenly. And I don't mean to rhyme it in a silly way. I didn't even mean to rhyme it at all, but I rhymed it. My nose is running, I can feel it. So shout out to being who you are, dude. And you can't so much if you can't even breathe evenly on an earth with gravity and a center line to the human being. Okay. So anyway, yeah, because it's just not getting cleared out on this right side above where your fingers are, because you just can't even lift your own arm, dude. Yeah, we talked about so much here. It's as real as it gets, like I say. That's why I say the phrase, don't believe me, because I could try to make anything be anything, and I don't care to. Don't believe me, truth is truth, and this is what's happening, dude. No joke. It's just, it's stuff that people don't talk about often. That's why I laugh like that, because people will go to all sorts of things to try to find the solution, and it is clothing, period, and done. But you've got to be able to break up the scar tissue, which is what I've been doing. You might even be able to see, because I'm pretty close up right now with the camera, and you can see it on other people as well. The distance between their eyeball, like the center of the pupil of their eye, and the center of their actual nose, it's different often left to right. And you'll see on the right side of people's nose this like bound up looking scar tissue. That's what it is, and that's what it's from. It wouldn't happen if there wasn't clothing placed on us, because if there wasn't something altering the ability to lift your shoulders evenly, and even if that's not shoulder seams, that's coming from your feet, rotating your entire body. If shoes are tied any way that's not evenly over toward the center line of the human being on both feet, then you're just not able to lift things, because mechanically your body is just inhibited from a rope at its foundation. And it just happens, dude. It happens, and it happens. The dreaded collar seam will just place the shoulders imbalanced. Look up the dreaded collar seam modification under In The Image Clothing Company. You'll never be able to blow your nose evenly with a collar seam in your shirt or top of any kind if we don't modify it and all that we can to just make it evenly to, as that video under In The Image Clothing Company's main site here states, keeping collars centered, right? If we don't allow that to be the case, then you're going to come at blowing your nose imbalanced, and then every breath you ever take from that point on will also be imbalanced. So we need to blow our nose evenly. Get your fingers right up in here next to where your eyes are, just like the top of your nose, right? And blow your nose into the tissue. And what happens often too is tissues, if they're just not big enough to be able to hold with your fingers up here at the top of your nose, and then have the tissue still come down far enough to where at the bottom of your nostrils, where you're blowing out of, it's going to actually catch in the tissue, then what you'll do is start your fingers lower, like halfway down the nostril, and you'll clear the lower part of the nostril, and then your nose can't scrunch. Right? I talk about the importance of this because there's a video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company here titled How Clothing Affects the Nose, because it does, right? The nose needs to be able to scrunch, so the shoulders need to be high enough to where that can happen, meaning able to rest in their only neutral location rather than being pulled down by any item of clothing that could possibly do that. Again, even just down to the feet, lacing shoes incorrect, collapsing our arches, not allowing our shoulders to even open, as far as the socket of them having mobility in it. Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up, because I could just talk about this and talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, dude, because it's just as real as it gets. Okay, and clothing's the reason. Otherwise, you'd just be able to lift your arms even if you didn't have things that were changing the ability for that to happen, right? Keeping short sleeves short, that's a video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company here. If your short sleeves are different lengths, you're not going to be able to lift your arms evenly, okay? And then you've blown your nose unevenly. So breaking up this scar tissue here, okay? But do it with your own body. Just, use your own hands and just, be gentle with yourself. But anywhere you feel scar tissue in the body, it can be broken up. You don't need anything else besides your own body to do it. So, yeah. So there you go, okay? I've been doing this, and I was even doing it last night, laying in bed, okay? And, yeah. There's a lot that happens, dude. Cartilage within the ears is just the hole of the ear canal, which is the gap between the rear of the jaw here and the base of the skull back here, okay? The nose, it's going to affect how you can see, okay? And if you can't see all the way to one direction, you're going to compensate with your body to then try to look and change your whole body, like that video I referenced earlier, okay? It's just as real as it gets. So, yeah, okay. We need to be able to scrunch the nose, and if it's not able to happen, that means, well, your shoulders need to be able to actually get high enough. Otherwise, things are just being pulled on. The skin of the entire body is all one. And so if your shoulders are down here, stretching your skin down is not going to allow your skin on your nose to scrunch up. Okay. But yes, blowing the nose and how it affects body mechanics. There you go. This is a nice and close and personal video, man. About 1.5 feet away from the lens of the camera. So there you go. Okay. Be careful. And it's so funny because I've said that before. There's certain things I've said be careful about. And I've said, like, that's probably something that you've never heard. Being careful about, you know, blowing your nose for this video's sake, right? Is what I mean. Like, yeah, be careful not to blow your nose uneven. Otherwise, you're suffering patternings that can potentially last the rest of your entire life on this earth. Yeah. Yeah. Because then all of a sudden you develop a limp with your legs because your breathing patterns from your imbalanced nose go to your lungs. Now your rib cage can only expand unevenly, and your ribs just connect to the center of you, the sternum and the spine on both front and back. And now your whole body's twisted and rotated from really your nose, but then your spine. And now that goes to your shoulders, and it goes to your hips, and from your shoulders it goes out to your hands, and from your hips it goes down to your feet. And here's a couple cute little doodles, which means poodle mixes. So blow your nose carefully. I know that's weird, but on In the Image Clothing Company dogs, we're done. We're done talking about this, and it's as real as it gets, so don't dismiss it. If you've watched this whole thing and you dismiss it after I've discussed it as thorough as it is, it's as real as it is. There's no opinions that we have under In the Image Clothing Company, so that's the only reason I'm making any of these videos. That's the only reason we'd ever have clothing available, is because of how damaging other clothing from other people is nowadays. And it's maybe not even their fault if they don't know, but yeah, there's a B. So In the Image Clothing Company dogs, I personally, Evan Strong, will be breeding standard poodles, purebreds. So I saw these cute little dogs here that I mentioned seeing because I do love poodles. Okay, stick around for that if you'd like to. The human body, man, it only ever does what it does. It only works one way. Every part of it. Everything has to play its role, and if there's imbalances, it's traveling to something else. We meaning anybody who actually knows how the human body really works. The only way it ever could as an entirety, okay? No specialists can benefit you because of what I'm going to say, what I'm leading up to. Pain and problems within the human body is almost in every single case coming from a different location. Okay, if you have pain in a certain part of your body, it's almost always just because it's trying to compensate for something else not working. So, right, back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, it can be and is coming from, in the ways that it just would have to be, your nose. If your cartilage and scar tissue and nostril discrepancy is there, okay, in your nose, because it goes straight to your lungs, dude, and that's something that has to evenly expand in 360 degrees, or there's just damage and compensation happening within the body, period, and done. No opinion I could have, like the episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast title, right? So, thank you. Stick around. Because I've said this, seriously, I mean, if you want a puppy from our litters, you could potentially end up with one when it happens, right? And so, yeah, purebred standard poodles, okay? But all three sides of the company that are not this one, meaning in addition to this fourth, are things like this. Stuff that applies to every human being to ever live, and stuff that will never change because it couldn't. The body's just what it is, and we're not going to have any kind of say in altering it in any way without damage happening. And it's happening from stuff that we maybe don't know as human beings, but stuff that if we're talking about under In The Image Clothing Company, it's because we do know it, and it's actually real, and the fix, not something that you could try and maybe would, possibly, might, if, and right, no. We give the truth here, and we also give realness, and so I'm out here with wind noise and just standing here about 1.5 feet from the camera, and yeah, dude, raw and real, right? How real you want to get? Hang out with us, dude, In The Image Clothing Company. You got a problem with me? Stick around, you know? I say that under In The Image Clothing Company podcast, though, you know? You got a problem with In The Image Clothing Company? Stick around. Deeper context brings deeper understandings. And boy, are our videos long, right? We've got lengthy videos because I do what I've done within this one, and I discuss it to the point where it's like, you got no question. If I would have just said something simple about the nose possibly imbalancing the body, you'd be like, dude, what are you talking about? But I discussed it well, meaning thoroughly, right? Well is maybe a perception, but thoroughly is something you couldn't deny, okay? We get thorough here because truth is truth, dude. So, stick around, brother. Or sister, man. We're all brothers and sisters in the body of Christ, right? Jesus Christ, he designed us all. And so, hang out on In The Image Clothing Company podcast, and we just discuss what's really happening, dude, right? So, there you go. Okay, break up that scar tissue, though. And we talk about it, scar tissue within the body. Talk about the right side of the body. It's almost always the right side, for reasons like what I've discussed within this, meaning these reasons specifically, yes. Okay, so, thank you. It's as real as it gets. It's huge, it's massive, okay? Because you'll never actually get your right side to be higher if your nose is imbalanced either, right? It goes both ways. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just the human body. So if you don't get your nose to be able to allow you to breathe evenly, you're never going to get your shoulders at even heights, even if you start wearing clothing that's balanced after wearing imbalanced clothing that's been causing scar tissue for decades, maybe, right? Years, however long it's been. So you have to look at the body as a whole. There's no other way to do it because that's all that it is. Yeah. Thank you.